Not just because I see the Northern Lights, all of a sudden I'm jumping on this. It's 2, 5, 10 prophecies, coincidences, all fitting together. Look where we are, look at the signs of the times, look at the unravelling of all these prophecies. She says, if you want to see the state of the world, look at the state of your church. If your church is good, the world's good. The church needs a clear out, so does the planet.
We're going to have Mark McLean on the team. Mark McLean has a YouTube channel where he talks a lot about prophecy. He's a Catholic from Ireland, and we're going to have him on the show at 30 past the hour because a lot of people are asking the question, hey, Northern Lights, when was the last time we saw, it was kind of like a big deal all over the world and something big happened? Oh, yeah, it was Fatima. It was Our Lady Fatima when she said, look for the sign in the sky, and there were Northern Lights, kind of like what we just had experienced here throughout the Northern Hemisphere. And then there was a war. A bad one. 70-some-odd million people died. It was pretty horrible. Are we looking too far into this latest round of Northern Lights? Maybe. And I thought Mark McLean had a very balanced and thoughtful approach to it all, and that's coming up.
By the way, my name is Joe McLean. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Do you think that the Northern Lights that we saw recently, the biggest solar storm, geostorm that we've had in 20 plus years, covering most of the Northern Hemisphere, you think that had anything to do with prophecy? I think a lot of people are thinking that right now because we're all remembering Our Lady Fatima and her warning about strange lights in the sky. And about a month later, Poland was invaded. Well, recently, Mark McLean, who on his YouTube channel put out a video, A Sign from Heaven, and I loved what he had to say. So we've invited him on. Mark, good morning to you. Thank you for your time today.
Hi, Joe. It was a lovely surprise to hear from you. I've been watching your content for some time now. Great to be here.
Let's talk about A Sign from Heaven. The Aurora Borealis, or these Northern Lights. We don't get them here in the great state of Texas all that often. In fact, almost never. And to see them just right up the road from me, a lot of people are very concerned, let's put it that way. But let me get your take. What did you think about the Northern Lights, and what's the connection to Our Lady Fatima?
Yeah, well, the Northern Lights are something beautiful to see. I've only seen it from the TV screen, unfortunately. But Scotland isn't too much of a stranger to seeing them coming down quite a bit now to the central area of Scotland. But it's very, very rare indeed to see it anywhere in Europe or further south. And as soon as I saw that happening, yes, it's beautiful to see, that's the first thing, but also we know the cause why it's happening with the solar storms, etc. But it reminded me of Fatima, and as soon as I see the Northern Lights covering all different parts of the planet, really, this was even bigger than the reported Northern Lights that came about as prophesied from her, Fatima, to Lucia. She told her that when you see a strange light in the sky, it's a sign from God that the world is about to be punished for its sins. And years later, as a Carmelite nun, I believe, at the time, in the convent, she saw the Northern Lights, and it made headline news in the papers back then. Of course, they never had internet or social media, but the papers picked it up that this strange Northern Light phenomena was across all of Europe. And she knew that was the sign her Blessed Mother told her about years before. It was under Pope Pius the 11th, I believe. And everything came as true as Our Lady prophesied back in 1917. World War II quickly commenced. And now we're not just seeing the fact that it's Northern Lights that are happening all over the globe. It's coming at a time, again, with the context. Russia's not just at war, bringing other prophecies from Marie Giuliani or La Salette, etc. We're seeing the fact that it's threatening NATO. It's also affecting or threatening the UK directly, which I said in the video, they're actually threatening to put Britain beneath the waves with the technology that they have through bombs in the ocean or something like that. And again, prophecies go back to Ireland, speak about how Britain would sink beneath the waves. So again, it's not just because I see the Northern Lights, all of a sudden I'm jumping on this. This is like I always say in my videos, it's 2, 5, 10 prophecies, coincidences, all fitting together.
I think a lot of people are very concerned. They're thinking about Ukraine right now, and they're thinking about the threats that come out of the Kremlin. And we're sort of given one of two choices. You're either 100% for Ukraine and NATO, or you're 100% against. I've always tried to find that middle ground. How do you see that as far as prophecy goes? It seems like things are aligning and more people are paying attention.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think since the lockdowns began, you notice the Google Trends, the searching. I have a Marian Apparitions Facebook group page grown organically, and I was accepting 100 members at a time. As soon as I hit approved all to join, others were popping up. I've never seen anything like it. And if you look at the Google Trends over the past few years, people that are saying the data showed maybe 5+ years ago, then they see it now. It's astronomical in the search volumes. So people are catching on. And hopefully, from all our respective platforms, doing our part, trying to do it for the Lord, then people are starting to find us. Because just recently I'm starting to notice, like you and I speaking now, I've had others coming back and forth. We're starting to unite across the world, doing our part. And hopefully, I call it casting out the nets every time I do a video. I want to get as many people looking at this, not with faith, which is obviously number one, but look at it logically. If you don't have faith, surely this 1 or 10 or 20 prophecies are all coming together now. And I try and do that in the videos with the timeline, bringing in the sources, seeing it all fitting together. And Russia has always been key to the prophecies with the Marian apparitions, with Fatima. If you go before Fatima, Marian right now for me is quite the icing on the cake. She spoke about how Russia would come across Europe, right through France, and at the same time, mass migration of Muslims would come into Europe as well. Are we not seeing that?
Yeah.
Again, with Xavier's theory, which so far seems to be correct, and I'm in agreement with him so far because of the context, but also the passing of a long-reigning English queen would occur round about this time as well. And the new sovereign on the throne would see the Israel and Persia relationship disintegrate, and the UK would be involved. That's modern-day Iran and Israel. We're seeing that at the same time.
So I don't even know that you have to go towards Marie-Julie Jehani, but you can. You put her on the table. I think that causes even greater concern. But I also loved your response to that in the video. You don't seem very alarmed, Mark. Why not?
I think since Sam Smith's devilish act at the Grammys last year really showed that they're pushing the boundaries. It's not something that's under the carpet or hidden in the shadows as much as it may have been once upon a time. I had Zachary King, an ex-top Satanist, high wizard, really give a 4-hour talk on so many things that really goes on in that darkened world of people. And now we're seeing what I call these little minions, like Sam Smith or Lady Gaga's. Madonna's always been there. And then now we're seeing Bambi Thug. And what I'm noticing now is they're not hiding it as much. It's becoming the new trend. And it's not just Bambi Thug. That was the extreme. But what stood out for me at this Eurovision, which if people in America don't know much about it, it's the biggest song contest that's been on for decades, 60-odd years. It's how ABBA became famous after winning it with their song Waterloo. Every year a different European country hosts it. And this being the 50th anniversary, it was in Sweden, the home of ABBA. But look how it was tarnished. You had a cross. It was the stage was the shape of a cross. You had nudity. You had LGBTQ as expected everywhere. You had profanity lyrics. The guy who won it from Switzerland, I don't know if he was wearing an upside-down cross, but it looked like one. I couldn't quite see it on the screen. But at the end of the song, out of all things, he rips it off his neck, putting emphasis on it. But when he won, he came out with his miniskirt on, and he also had a crown of thorns given to him as he won. Wow. So wait a minute here. The symbolism is really standing out, and it's not one or two, but dozens of acts in the one show. if that doesn't highlight the fall of the West and the state of morality and what they're trying to push now as the next thing, I don't know what is, because it's very much focused on satanic things like it's a trend.
So, yeah, the world is not doing well. There's a lot of problems, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And more recently, there was a total eclipse here in the United States that a lot of people found very prophetic. Wherein lies the balance, Mark? Where do we find the balance between reading too much into this stuff and then dismissing it altogether, as some would do? It seems like nobody finds the middle ground. What do you say?
Yeah, I think it's always about the balance as well. And lockdown taught me not to cast your pearl before swine, because nowadays it's more about arguments and debates and trying to get your own thoughts across, the ego, the pride, maybe. And I've just backed off in a lot of ways from that the last few years. I'm there from a good position, trying to get people to see, look where we are, look at the signs of the times, look at the unraveling of all these prophecies. But sometimes you're speaking against a brick wall. The eclipse is hard to ignore. I did a video on that as well. But again, I'm not sitting there for the next thing to look at or look up in the sky. I'm not looking at all these other alleged seers popping up left, right and centre, especially between Canada and South America. I think I've not got the time. I'm too busy working, and when I'm not working, I'm trying to pray my rosaries, I'm trying to read the scriptures, I'm trying to fast on Wednesdays and Fridays, and all the other messages our Blessed Mother has asked us to do. I came back from pilgrimage last August from Medjugorje, and I'm been there a few times, but this particular one was the first time in a few years. And it really hit the heart. It was such conviction. It's all or nothing. And when I'm there, I couldn't care less if the world's burning around me with all other prophecies coming true. I'm in a state of peace that only God can give, and I don't want that to end. I don't want to lose that for anything. Focus on the messages, focus on the remedy, and get yourself prepared for the battle that we're in every single day. Through prayer, fasting, scriptures, the sacraments, going to monthly confession at least, receiving the Holy Eucharist worthily, because it goes back to Our Lady of Good Success, which I was going to say before the break there. She says, when you see the saturation, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but when you see it looks like evil has triumphed, like the triumph of evil is clearly won in the world, then my moment has arrived. And this is where God is going to step in. We've got our free will, and look where it's going. The examples I was given with the Eurovision acts, just as one example, and then Sam Smith at the Grammys, and now it's becoming more and more. This church seems to be staying silent in a lot of ways. And another prophecies we're expecting is, are they going to change the liturgy? Are they going to change certain teachings? We're going through a great synod just now where, again, people are thinking of Garabandal and all the other links, the four popes since the 60s, etc. But in the Archdiocese of Edinburgh, coming June 8th, there's going to be an open discussion and presentation, because apparently the new liturgy, an all-inclusive liturgy, is going to be coming into effect this Advent. So we've got all this to unravel, fitting again in the context. When people say, oh, God's a little bit quiet, or he only gives one or two signs, I think he's given us an abundance of signs. We're walking Noahs. That's my new line this week. We're ready to get on the arks, and everyone thinks we're crazy. I'll be a fool for God any day.
We don't know the day or the hour, but Jesus did command us to read the signs of the times and act accordingly. You don't have a choice in the matter. He expects you to read the signs of the times and then act accordingly. Mark, why do so many Catholics seem so tone deaf on these signs?
I think that we live in a world where everything has to just get by. I mean, people were herded through lockdowns and things like that because of fear. You know, it's like this great sense of fear, and you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to be ostracised from the public eye when everyone's against you. And now it can all be done on social media rather than in person. People just want a simple, easy, stress-free life as best as possible. We're overworked. We're overstretched. We're being herded in a social setup in a way. And I think people just have lost the idea of what it means to fight for something they truly believe in. But then that would beg the question, well, do they have great faith? Is their faith being nourished? What's the church like? Things like that. And I'm sure it was Rosa Mystica, the apparitions of Our Lady, again with the Fatima children appeared. I read it years ago, top of my head. I'm sure, again, it's a paraphrase, but from that apparition, she says, if you want to see the state of the world, look at the state of your church, because it's the vacuum of grace. It's where the divine comes into the earth. If your church is good, the world's good. If the church needs a clear out, so does the planet. What he says as well with John 15 a moment ago, I agree with you about, he told the apostles off, he rebuked them for not being aware of the signs of the times. But last week's reading at one of the masses as well, he says, when you see these signs occur, they stand as testimony to the truth that I'm telling you. So when these things are playing out left, right and centre, the way I see it, and where, like Xavier and many others that are aware of it all, you couldn't make it up. There's so much. And it stands to testimony. That's what I would like to just highlight with that.
Our Lady of Fatima, I think, is so pivotal. And I want to ask you a question. They're coming out with this document. In 3 days from now, they're going to come out with a document on apparitions. There's rumors that they're downplaying Fatima. What do you think?
I think we'll wait to see before we get too hysteric and hope and think about the worst, because I think pastorally the church does have to address it, because Jesus also says in these times that many would come in my name and deceive many. So there has to be that level of discernment, and Mother Church has to guide us properly. I think a lot of the more modern alleged seers and visionaries are very much looking at apocalyptic messages constantly. And it never brings me any peace. That's why I don't do too many. I'm trying to live the messages and my faith, where the peace and the joy and the virtues and everything else comes from. However, I also would think if Pope Francis has got anything to do with this letter, I would be surprised if he downplays Fatima. And the reason being, not because of the history and the link to the assassination attempt in John Paul II and things like that we know of, but I was at seminary in Rome for 4 years between 2010 and 2014. I was there when Pope Benedict retired. I was there and waiting for Francis popping out in the balcony. And my observations of that new Pope, the first morning, there was a shockwave in Rome. The Pope paid his hotel bill. He went to Mary Majors and consecrated his papacy to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. He brought the Fatima statue within the first few months of his pontificate to Rome, and I was there in the audience at the Vatican. I believe he knows the significance of Fatima for now, as Pope Benedict did as well. And I'd be gobsmacked if Fatima was downplayed.
I would love to believe that they won't downplay these things, but I have to say, I think the potential is real for them to be inclined to downplay these things, because they don't have the stomach for the apocalyptic elements of these. And you don't got to go too far afield to find them. Fatima, that's obviously one. Our Lady of La Salette is another. There's even elements in it at Lourdes, of course. I mean, of course, Akita. These are all the ones that are definitely approved. And Our Lady of Revelation was also approved by Pius XII, who experienced the miracle of the sun himself in the Vatican Gardens as an affirmation in 1950. I'm concerned that might further divide rather than unite. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, division definitely coming from the evil one. And again, Akita, Japan, she spoke about how the influence of Satan would go right through the top of the church, cardinals against cardinals, bishops against bishops. Have we been seeing that in recent years?
Yeah.
Things have always been around, but it's the intensity. In fact, I went to Garabandal a few years ago, and unbeknown to me, I was speaking to a man for an hour. He befriended me, sat me down, glass of wine and things. He turned out to be the son of the visionary Mary Lowley. And he and I have kept in touch a couple of times. And I've said this on one of my videos. I forget the Latin for it. But he wrote to me saying, whatever the Latin was, it was like, as things approach the end, things come much faster. You're starting to see it left, right, and centre, quicker and quicker. And there's the Latin name that the Romans used to use. I forget what it is. But as we approach the end, things become faster. Things start coming. And see, I would tell people, if they do find the channel, to watch the timeline video I put together. Because from La Salette right through Marie Julia Henny, Our Lady of Fatima, Akita Japan, Garabandal. I bring it all together with what she says with the migrants, with Garabandal about the 4 popes left. We're here with Benedict Dunn. It's so coincidentally coming at the same time as the prophesied 2 popes of Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. She spoke about the split in the church. Some of her prophecies of April 12th, I linked to Bruno in Trefontane, which I do believe in. I love the video, and I've done one myself, the story of Trefontane in Rome,
Yeah.
the Lady of Revelation. I'm quite a numbers guy. I'm quite analytical. You know, the October 13th, the May 13th connections. But
Right.
April 12th with Anne Catherine Emmerich and Bruno speak about a divided church as well.
Oh,
And
yeah,
the
big
theme
time.
about the attack on the Pope. There's a lot of things coming, and I wouldn't be surprised between now and the end of 2025, there's going to be a pivotal change in the world and in the church. I really do feel that. Life's going to go on, but hell's going to get worse before God steps in. And then, please God, we're heading into the triumph.
I'm going to pray. My job is to pray. I'm going to pray my rosary. I'm going to be obedient to my state in life. I'm going to provide for my wife and my family. I'm going to do my job with excellence. I'm going to, be kind to my neighbor, but I'm also going to proclaim the glory of God, whether they like it or not. Let the chips fall where they may. And in places like the UK, Mark, I mean, Scotland has a hate crime law that's the worst in all of Europe. It's getting harder to proclaim that message, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the new thing on my radar that's standing out. It seems to be mirroring the same ideas of Canada, which apparently are trying to spread into the US as well. And it's not like the Islamic side or as much as the atheist side. It's actually the anti-Semitic reasons for why the Bible preaching on the streets and things like that won't be happening. This is what they're pushing. Again, ex-seminarian, I'm in touch with a lot of clergy in the country and about, and I've known for many, many months, maybe a year now, that local councils, like local government offices and officials, they're having talks with the clergy on about inclusive language and what can be said, what can't be said, which is probably why the Vatican are pushing out this so-called all-inclusive liturgy, whatever that's going to mean. But we'll wait and see. But there is talks about it coming publicly on June 8th in Edinburgh. But the hate crime bill, I was also told through a source that the priests, again, Scotland's very close-knit. You know everyone, like little towns and villages. Word gets about greatly in Scotland. But the First Minister, who was Muslim, and he tried to get rid of the Green Party because of the deal that was made with his party, the Scottish National Party, who are in charge just now. The Greens are the ones pushing for more pro-LGBTQ with the school kids and everything else. They're more vicious with the pro-abortion stuff. And apparently he who goes to the mosque in South Glasgow has been basically told with his own mosque leaders, take nothing to do with that. And it's part of the reason he tried to cut off ties with the Green Party, only then forward quickly to get forced to resign. But under the carpet it was the reason of faith. But now the Deputy First Minister, I forget her name, but the one thing she's getting targeted for a lot is because of her Christian faith. And this is the thing in Scotland right now, as it is in the West, really. But you see, because of this close, small-knit country, is in the anti-Catholic culture that's been here, like Ireland with the Troubles and all that, the religious thing in Scotland and Ireland is different from anywhere else in the world, sad to say. But it's still very much in the roots in society. And this, I don't know how well the Catholic Church is holding out in Scotland, because we do have our own Catholic schools, but everything seems to be silent. No one's talking up. And that was one of my biggest frustrations with the seminary, was a lot of weak, non-courageous so-called men. And they're not all bad, some are good, but there's a lot of issues I could get into there as well. Cardinal O'Brien fell from grace while I was in seminary. A lot of other things going on with the homosexuality stuff, everything. But one thing was, you can't rock the boat. And it's like, well, how can you rock a boat that's sinking? Your silence is causing it to sink. Step up. Where's your zeal, like the apostles after Pentecost? Where is your St. Paul's? Where are they?
They're going to be judged worse more than, I as a father, I got to tell you, I know that I'm going to be responsible for many sins that my family has committed, because the buck stops with me, and it starts with me too. How How much more for bishops, for cardinals, for the Pope for that matter? But they act and they conduct themselves in ways as though they're oblivious to that, don't you think?
Yeah, there's something that goes on in seminary, like there's something that needs exercised or something like that properly, because I did a couple of come and sees with the friars of the renewal. I even did a week with the Carthusians in the monastery, which is an amazing experience I'll never forget. You knew you were in the company of holy mystics, holy men, and you could be free with your faith, the expression of it, everything. And then when I went to the diocesan side of things, it's like straight away you can sense the negativity, the dullness of attitude, the lack of zeal and fire in the belly. And I get told from good priests, keep your head down, just play the game. And this is an environment the world over, especially in the West. I saw it with the English, the Irish, the Scots. It's the same idea, and it's a clerical pride, an intellectual pride that comes about. And all of a sudden, it's like everyone has the great opinions. And even at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's constant debates and constant philosophical or theological discussions. And that's a mask for a lot of them. And then all of a sudden, they become priests. How are they inspiring people? And I was saying to someone just the other day, see if I was a business owner or a team leader with a big company that I'm with just now, a lot of changes happening. There's a big company here where it's been bought over for billions of dollars, and the new company's been observing the data for 3 years, and now they're making massive changes, redundancies, changing job names and job abilities and responsibilities. And it's like they've looked at 3 years of data. What happens if the church was like a business and you walk in, the new owner, you've observed for a few years, you've seen the data for the last 60 years, let's say, from the 1960s, and then you're looking at every measure of data possible. And this is what needs to change. Here are the good ones with good data. Here are the ones that need to improve. And you give them a bit of time. How many people would you fire who are priests or bishops?
Right,
How many are saying, right,
exactly.
Your numbers are down.
Yeah.
How many vacations have came from your priesthood and your parish?
Right.
How many,
Right.
What's the data every week for attendances? What's the catechesis like? What's the knowledge
Exactly,
like?
yes.
You have to take all that and you're fired.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine having to sit through an annual job review with those stats? I mean, like, how do you keep your job? It makes zero sense. How do you keep your job given these numbers? You are failing in every demonstrable category, and it's not because some rad trad thinks so. It's just the numbers saying so. And yet they do nothing different, which is why so many of us are being critical, not only of like what may come out of the Vatican next, because their track record suggests that what comes out next will also be bad. But think about in the United States, we had this Eucharistic revival thing, and they got this big, Eucharistic Congress happening this summer in Indianapolis, and they're expecting a massive crowd. But are you being serious? Do you really want to solve the problem, or you just want some emotional experience, some emotional high, and that you can all feel good about yourselves and go home and the numbers don't actually change? The needle's not moved because we're not being serious about getting rid of the things in liturgy that take away from the reality of Jesus Christ being truly present in the Blessed Sacrament. Bring back the altar rails. Bring back communion on the tongue. Do ad orientem. Like, go back to the sacredness and intentionality of the traditional Latin Mass, because it works. And it's just simply mathematically better for all people concerned. Do you see a time when these bishops will get off that fence and take that courageous step?
Well, there'll come a point where I think even a scared dog gets backed into a corner. The last thing that'll do as a last resolve is to bite. And I think that might be the case. It comes to the point of desperation. But I think you're still going to see a great big split in the church as well. I mean, again, there's a lot of prophecies around that, and we can see it unfolding. There's so many things happening right now. I couldn't list them all off the top of my head. But the Scottish bishops have already consecrated Scotland to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which I think is a great thing. We've had the Rosary on the coast, where all these little groups, it'd be an individual or it could be a group of many, all around Scotland. In fact, it might have been Britain, but I know Scotland had Rosary on the coast every area. I mean, that's the good stuff. I'm friends with one of the bishops because he used to be a spiritual director, and I've got confidence in him and a few others. Scotland's got some good guys in charge, but it is this silence for now. And maybe there's a wisdom in it that I'm unaware of, but I know they're working. I know the local councils, the local governments are forcing in this inclusivity stuff, the language and what can be said. I know African priests or other foreign priests come in to do some cover. They're being told, don't rock the boat. Watch what you preach, things like that. One priest did say something back home about a year or two ago about, he didn't get in too deep with it. He just made a clear comment about what the church teaching is with marriage. That was it. Nothing hell, fire and brimstone or nothing like that. But there's at least 7 people waiting for him after Mass to complain about him and how out of order he was and all the rest of it.
Wow.
And you see, so the thing with the Catholic Church, I see the harvest time coming soon, whatever. I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but the weeds, the darnel, it's very much grown now. You can't miss it. It's mixed in and it's grown. And I don't know, I couldn't be confident in the people in the church with me every single week, what they're going to do to bend over. Because for me, the lockdown stuff and all that, that's starting to unravel now. Is it? Right, another conspiracy theory became a fact when AstraZeneca get pulled off there. And we've been saying it. Do you know, in my parish, no one shakes hands at the sign of peace. It's like Namaste bows and wavy hands, and I'm like, this really annoys me. But this is what fear has done to people. And it only took a little year or two to do that. And the churches being closed, that was a great sign where there was no fight back with the churches.
Yeah.
But once upon a time, people would have been flooding the churches, begging God to take this away. But now we close the churches.
Yeah, that was the answer to the plague in Rome, was to lead a Eucharistic procession to Our Lady of Mary Major there in Rome. And, St. Michael comes to the rescue and the plague is gone. I mean, like, that's the answer to the church in tradition and history, but that's not what we're doing anymore. We don't do that anymore. We don't leverage the power of grace, sacraments, and sacramentals in the church as a body of Christ. We leverage the power of insurance agents who tell us, oh, well, if they get sick and die in your parish, you're going to have to pay out. You don't want that. Close the doors. And that's exactly what they did. They closed the doors, listening to the voice of the world. That is a tragedy, which is something else I say on this program a lot is we need to get on our knees and pray, fast, do penance and acts of reparation for the clergy, for the hierarchy of the church. Because if we don't, who else will? Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.